Hey docs, you're in for a total treat because this is the most engaging format we have found for this particular podcast. What I'm talking about is a live studio audience in Sydney, Australia. Let me tell you, the Australians and the Kiwis did not disappoint. Their infectious energy, big smiles, and total appreciation for James and I going down there to do the best practices seminar was second to none. I mean, the love and affection for the great distance we went was super fun to walk into and very rewarding by the end. However, what you're about to hear in this particular podcast is James and I sitting down with a good mix of the audience who submitted questions. We rifle through, pick the questions we like, and then we call that person to the mic. So just to be fair, this is a live studio audience. We had well over 150 people in attendance, and their questions are then echoed in the laughs and the applause from the people who are still in the room. So you're going to get some good energy, I think, out of this one. You will always get great content. I know that for sure. And some of the humor and some of the laughs and the banter that the attendees or the delegates brought to the mic was phenomenal. So you're in for a total treat. And as we go around the globe and we share this message of chiropractic in the live format and in the seminar format called Best Practices, I just want you to know you can always get the virtual format here for the Chiro-Factor. Look, there's many factors in health, and we know the difference oftentimes is your chiropractic adjustment. When we couple that with the insight in the questions from the audience, this is a really specific Chiro-Factor podcast that I know you're going to need to listen to more than once. Hey, it's my pleasure to work with James, and in this particular episode, it was a total treat for us to get to know the Aussies up close and personal and hear from them and the live audience. Please enjoy the Sydney, Australia version of the Chiro-Factor. Hey everybody, welcome to a live episode in Sydney, Australia. As you can tell, we have a live audience. Let me hear it from my audience. It's something I've been wanting to do since I was a child, if you guys would indulge me. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Fuck yeah, I'm done. See you guys later. Listen, there's many factors in health, but we know the X factor is oftentimes the Chiro-Factor. So as we sit down today, we're going to hear from our Australian audience. We have guests here from New Zealand. We've got a doc here from South Africa. And we've also got a number of docs that didn't make it because of a cyclone. But as you can tell, we've got a great group. This is a fired up movement happening here in Australia. And I'm super excited to be a part of it here with Dr. James Chestnut, as always. And today we've got a special guest, another person I look up to and I would call a big brother, James being number one and Martin Harvey being number two. So I appreciate you taking some time and being here. And we're going to kick it off with past president of the ASRF, Dr. Martin Harvey, and also a really good friend of both James and I. So Martin, thank you for being here. And we'd love to hear your intelligent question.
Well, it was my pleasure to be here until I got number two.
Well, I think as I'm older, I was upset too. So.
Okay, next contestant's going to be. No.
All right, so question. We've been talking a lot about the value of care plans and the necessity for care plans that aren't based on people's pain and are really based on their clinical needs. And it might be something that's completely unique to Australia, but we have people that are on care plans. And my experience is sometimes you have that situation where they don't follow the care plan. You've mapped it out, they agree to it, but then they get somewhere down the line and either they're missing visits or they're not there for a couple of weeks, and you see this sort of pattern forming that clearly is going to impact their results. So how do you handle that?
If it's cool, I'll jump in with a procedure and then you can back it up with a why. So I'm not going to reframe your question, but I just want to make sure I got it right. You have a patient who's agreed to a care plan, a series of visits, but somewhere along the way, they are no longer following that plan. And then they turn up in the practice and there they are. So what I like to do in my practice is give them basically like a 3-strike policy. Number one, hey, you haven't been in a while. We want you to get the results. Just so you know, the more frequent you are, the better the results are going to be. And that's based on dose response. So, some of the things that we talked about today with the evidence. Number two is, hey, John, you're still inconsistent with your care. I just want to make sure you get the best results. But if it takes you 9 months to finish a 2-month care plan, that isn't going to be the same thing. So we need the consistency in chiropractic. We need the repetition for you to get those results. And then on the third strike, I basically just pull them in the room and we sit them down. And just for everybody here, what I would call that is basically a square one script. And I sit them down and I go, listen, John, if you don't continue with the visits as we both agreed initially, you're going to go back to square one. So unfortunately, I've got to have a tough conversation with you today, because either I need to refund you the money and do the right thing for the unused visits, because you're not going to get the results if you keep showing up at this frequency, or I'm going to need you to recommit to the agreements we had in the beginning. I'm fine either way. I want to do this in a loving way. But if you're not going to make it in here, I feel obligated to give you your money back for the visits you're not using, because how infrequently you're coming, you're not going to get the results we talked about. From an ethical place, do you see my dilemma?
Yeah.
You guys, if you like that answer, put your hands together and just make some noise. Cool. So look, we're here teaching live at the Best Practices Seminar, not to be confused with the Chiro-Factor podcast. And at the Best Practices Seminar, we'll answer any question. We'll give you the material. We'll go through scripts. We were role playing today. Like, there's just not enough time in the day, honestly, for us to do this, even though we've been here all day. So when the questions come up, I want to answer that to the best of the ability. But that's an unfortunate situation. You're a good barometer here in Australia. I run a lot of things by you. How does that first land on you when I describe it that way?
I think it's awesome, because it's taking a difficult situation and making it about them, not about you. It's making sure that you're demonstrating that it's about their results, and that you're willing to forego the money that they've already given you. And it really pushes the responsibility where it needs to be on them, rather than you sort of taking responsibility for a behavior that you're not going to drive around and pick them up to bring them in.
Yeah, amen. And the thing is, it just feels right to go, look, if they just magically drop out and they call one day and want their money back, you're obligated to do that in any province, any country, any state. You have to do that for unused visits. Yeah. Why not be proactive and do it with a little bit of a love message behind it, and just go, look, just let's do this the right way, and then it puts it back on them completely. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I agree. Integrity. So what you're going to find in some countries, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but like say in Canada, you wouldn't have them prepaid. So there's no refund to give. But one of my rules always is that if you make it very easy and comfortable to leave your practice, it's really easy and comfortable to come back. And that's just something to just take to the bank with you. It's just so important. And so if they hadn't prepaid, it's the same answer, but it's like, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable taking your money. It'd be like if I was a personal trainer, and you only came in once every 2 weeks. I just know that's not going to get a result for you. I just don't feel right taking your money. So when you're ready, the door's always open, and I'm always here for you. But the rules are the same. The biological laws of healing are the same. You can't heal with that little stimulus. And so it's just not possible. So I'm really happy to when you're ready, I'm here. Yeah. And so if there's a refund to give, you give it. If there isn't, then I still think you say you don't want to take their money. Yeah, same idea, right? Yeah. But make it very easy and comfortable for them, to discontinue. And then they're very likely to come back.
Yeah, I love it. Make it easy to leave. It's easy to come back. Anything from your expertise that you would add, or plus a couple of good answers on that?
No, I think I pretty much nailed what I would have thought was the most important things, that people are doing what they do because of their circumstance and their beliefs, and you're not in that situation going to renegotiate it or completely. I think once they've got to that point, you just need to make a hard edge that they're either in or they're out.
Yeah, and you and I have had a couple beers and laughed about this, like the chiropractic smartass comments. Come back when you're ready. Yep. It's like, oof, that would be the opposite of Chestnut's advice.
Well, I love that. Come back when you're willing to take your health seriously, or that sort of bullshit, which sounds really impressive
petty.
To it. Yeah, petty.
It's petty, and it's not. It, no one's going to feel comfortable coming back on that. Yeah. Ever. Right. I just want to say, by the way, just before Martin takes off, is that, what year was it, Martin, when I first came over here? The very first time for that Parker, I think it was.
2004, was it?
Yeah. Anyway, it's like more than 20 years ago. Yeah. And so what happened was a bunch of us came over from, because they linked up with Parker seminars. Yeah. And a bunch of us came over, and so I'd never been to Australia before. I was super excited about it, and it was one of my first big international trips as a speaker. And my liaison was Martin, and it was just like, dude, it was such a great experience. You were so gracious, and man, it was just such a positive experience that it just made me want to come back. And then there's just like this, like, I don't know if it's Canada, Australia or whatever, but there was just seemed to be this kind of,
we both hate Americans. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
Thanks for coming, Martin. I really appreciate it.
and, you know, the Kiwis, whatever, right? But yeah, I don't know. It was just such a positive experience, and I think that was really instrumental in me, you know, and ending up coming over here so often later. So I always appreciated it.
I'm going to make one funny comment, one serious comment, and the funny comment is when if you have a good memory, right? You're not taking cholesterol lowering drugs or anything.
No, I'm not on statins.
Okay, good. So the memory's good. Do you remember when you came here and Martin and his wife Nicole picked you up? Did anybody eat carbs at dinner?
I don't know back then.
I'm going to tell you, no, they didn't, ladies and gentlemen. They were like, we were so afraid of what we ate in front of Chestnut. Nicole and I were laughing about this the other day. I go, oh, we have a bread story we can tell you. and then number two, on a serious note, I think there's a reason he's a great ambassador for chiropractic, and he's been just a legend in Australia. So, audience, if you would please, let's give it up for Martin Harvey on this one. Yeah.
Hey, docs, if you heard me talking about the Speak to Attract Believers workshop, I just want to let you know the last person at the microphone, Dr. Martin Harvey, is who I'm going to teach that course with. You see, when you purchase a seat, you get the online version immediately, and pretty much the same content as what we teach at the live seminar. However, at the live seminar, you're going to write your 10-minute talks. You're going to role play your 10-minute talks. And for that, we can't do it virtually. So again, one purchase gets you 2 tickets. 1 ticket to the masterclass online and 1 ticket live to the seminar I'm going to teach in July of 2025 with that last doctor, Dr. Martin Harvey, who is at the microphone. So just so you know who my faculty is and who I teach the Speak to Attract Believers workshop, it's going to be Martin Harvey. Now, what you learn at the workshop is how to do live presentations that are edutaining. You're an educator and you're entertaining as you go. You're going to do gives early in the talk so you can do an ask at the end of the talk. But the end of the talk shouldn't be where you do emotional closes. It should be where you do the logical close. You see, the emotional connection comes earlier in the presentation, and then the end is just instructions on how to become a new patient. That's the logic. In our profession, we have screwed this up. We try to make 90% of our presentations logic, and at the end we try to throw some emotion, and maybe you've even been coached to cry or shed a tear or something that just feels inauthentic and it's cringeworthy. If you want to get out of the cringe and into results, then join us for the Speak to Attract Believers. You'll do the workshop online first as a masterclass, and then you can join us again in the live workshop. And I have to tell you, you only pay once, but you get to enjoy it multiple times. The results will be exponential just from doing your first talk. You will multiply your investment on this program just from the very first talk you do and the new patients that are generated. And what's better still is you get to have this material for many years to come. Look, nobody does it better when it comes to new patients from talks, corporate talks. You'll learn the 60-minute version, you'll learn the 10-minute version. And in addition to 2 ways to learn, we also give you some live talk examples at no added fee. The programs we put on were notorious for over-delivering. Now is a great time to share this message. Share what you learn on these Chiro-Factor podcasts with a corporate audience, small businesses. It could be hobby groups or sport groups, places of worship. If this appeals to you, then learn to do this correctly, and you're going to have success. When you have success, your confidence will go up. You'll have more success. And let's get you looped into that cycle of success and confidence, not the loop of frustration and no results. Look, doing corporate talks is a metric. It's an analytic. When you're done, I don't want to hear how you feel. When you're done with your corporate talks after I've trained you, you're going to tell me how many new patients you got. It becomes a number that's quantifiable, and this is why we're excited to offer the Speak to Attract Believers workshop. You can find this on our levelupmentoring.rocks website, where you can also find seats to future best practice seminar. As of now, our pilot tour is done. We'll be announcing best practice dates. But if you want to purchase the masterclass and get a free seat to the live training that I'll be doing with Martin Harvey, levelupmentoring.rocks. It's not a .com because it rocks. Now back to the program.
All right, now I'm going to bring a blast from the past up here. So Lisa is going to come to the mic and she's going to ask her question, but I got to give a little context to this. First, Lisa went through all 4 years of chiropractic school with Chestnut. She claims it took him 6.5 years. Oh no, that doesn't say
That's
that
from
on the card.
suspension.
But you did go to chiropractic school with James, and you went to the Philosophically Sound Straight School. What's it called?
CMCC, Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, and I'm so blessed to have done that, because it doesn't matter where you go.
That's right.
It's what you get in the end.
Yeah.
But I actually just wanted to say, you know, I haven't known James for all these years, but we certainly, you know, spent a lot of time together in the 4 years, and he has never been any different than what you see right there. I think he might even be wearing the same shirt. No, but you know what he's always talked about is...
It's tighter in different spots now.
It's so helpful when people come and help me out. This is great.
Yeah. No, he's always talked about the truth. He's always talked about ethics. He has always done the research. He's always called them out. If any of the professors, if that's what you want to call them, using your words, would stand up and say something, he'd be like, no. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't jive with what I've read. Show me the paper.
In class, he would do this.
All the time. All the time. All the time, yeah.
Did he ever stand up and make a disruption in class?
All the time.
Could you give me one example?
You don't need to. There was just sort of like, it was all the time. I mean, I just remember, like the guys would just get up there and they'd be like talking away because they'd bring in, you know, the big guys from the universities who taught real medicine stuff. And they would get up there and say something, and James would just stand up and go, we need to talk, you know? Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, just a round of applause for authenticity. That's what this dude is,
never
right?
been any
It's just
different.
super serious. Yeah, love it. And then you can ask your question.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about responsibility, you know, and authenticity as well. I gave up my provider number about 1.5 years ago because I really disagree with a whole bunch of stuff around third-party payers for my people. I understand that people don't have a lot of money at times, but I've seen it over the 25 years I've been here absolutely erode people's responsibility for their own health. You know, it doesn't matter if you've pulled them off the doorstep of death. If that 12 visits is done, they're done. They're not coming back. But what I need to be able to, I mean, obviously I have a lot of people still coming to see me because they appreciate what it is that I do and what chiropractic does. But there are also a large percentage of the people that I don't even know really how to explain it to them clearly, how that erodes their sense of personal responsibility, and also where it goes eventually once everybody's enslaved by this idea that somebody else is responsible for their health care.
I'm going to be frank. I don't understand exactly what that is in Australia. I don't practice here, but
third-party payers.
Yeah, totally. I was just going to say it's a parallel in the U.S., which would be a third-party payer. And I just think, you know, day one in practice, I called my dad and I was looking for like a pep talk, and I said, you know, I'm about to open my doors. I was really nervous. It was probably minutes before I opened my doors, and I was like, what do I need to do? My father said, in the absence of value, cost is the only consideration. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. Like, I need some real information. He goes, no. In the absence of value, people will always play the numbers game. But if you bring value, money will never be an obstacle. It'll be easy for people to part with their dollars if they see value. So just focus on the value. And I had questions about insurance and stuff leading up to it and third-party payers. And he goes, I don't understand that either. But what I do understand is people need to either pay you with their time or their money, or both. And it always comes down to value. So no matter what the system is, if they value it, they will pay for it. And if they're dependent on a system, it's definitely going to decrease the value when the doctor's lazy in their communication. And when the doctor's lazy and goes, oh, well, this is covered, lay face down, well, then they haven't educated. And usually, I'm not saying this is your situation, but a lot of times chiropractors will create that problem because they just easily get them started, never educate them, and then later wonder why they drop out when they've never set the pre-frame correctly. And maybe that's something that will help you through this weekend, is just kind of pre-framing it a little bit better outside of a third party so that they opt in to pay and they're not asking the questions about the insurance. But I know this is more to your wheelhouse in Canada because it's a bigger deal too.
I wanted to sort of just redirect it a little bit too.
Sure.
It's also, you know, the bigger picture is educating people as they're coming in, before they come in and out in the public. So,
100%.
Yeah.
So I never took insurance when I practiced in BC. Like they had certain coverages or whatever. And I remember going to a meeting in one of my first weeks of practice, and it was all the chiropractors got together because they were going to drop the coverage from whatever it was, to like 12 visits at $7 a thing. And I said, you can't get your palm read for less than 25. Why are we begging for 7?
Right.
You know, but here's how I handled it often. I would say, if I thought the insurance companies had your best interest in mind, I'd work with them.
Beautiful.
But they don't. So I don't know if you've ever had a claim of anything, but the first thing they try to do is not pay. So I find it unethical to work with them. If you have coverage, I'll give you a receipt and you can deal with them, but I never let anyone come in between me and your care. So they're unethical. I don't work with unethical people. And people would always go, dude, I totally get it. And the other thing, I'll give you some advice my dad gave me, which was, son, the rich ones need loving too. So I'm going to say to you, the rich ones need care too.
Yeah.
You know, but I've never worried about what people. I remember the first time someone came back and said, I got to take out a loan for this, and I was like, I was kind of nervous, but I was like, yeah, you do. And they, you know, I felt the pressure. But what you realize is that if you're thinking about how much they can afford, you're thinking about the wrong thing. It's not relevant. It's not relevant. It's not. You're not empathetic because you're worried if they can afford it. You just have to tell them what they need.
Right.
That's your only job, right?
They'd come up for this money with the surgery. They'd come up for money for surgery if they had to.
They come up with money for booze and cigarettes. Let's be honest. So it's like, you know, and hookers and blow. So it's like, you know, whatever. I'm just talking about Brad.
I love podcasts in Australia. This is terrific. We've gone there. Look, it's a little bit different in the U.S. because there are third-party payers, and then there's middlemen with the third-party payers that negotiate with the chiropractors. Like, it's a step below that. And so for that, it's called ASHP or ACN for our American listeners. And I just said, similarly, I don't work for the insurance company. I work for you. And what they're counting on me doing is breaking the bad news, because our plans say you have up to 30 visits. You have up to, and then in the fine print it says, unless it's medically necessary. Well, I'm not even in the medical system. Why do I be medically necessary? What they approve is 5. And so what they do is they make the chiropractor the scapegoat, and then we have to explain, I know it says up to 30, you got 5. And they go, no. The worst thing I could hear is, my insurance covers everything. And I go, oh, we're in for a rude awakening. So similarly, I would just say, listen, your insurance has a middleman, and they want me to break the bad news that you only have some visits. In this office, you have none. So let me show you what it's going to take, and then we would just go through it. But really quickly, I opted out of all insurances just because that was the consistent conversation. And then we would do chiro math. It's like, you're supposed to have 30 and they're only going to give you 5, so I'll give you 12. And it was like, how did I get here? You know what I mean? I was confusing myself, and it was just like, just change the conversation. So again, I don't practice in Australia exactly, but I think the sentiment is the same, which is basically it's a value proposition. And
that was the impetus for me writing that white paper, which covers that. In fact, Keith just showed me a letter that he wrote based on that white paper to an insurance company. But listen, if all chiropractors do this, what did dentists do? Dentists said, well, you'll give us full coverage or we're not playing with you. And the insurance companies were getting complaint. The people were yelling, saying, you got to cover dental. It wasn't the other way around. Dentists didn't go to the insurance companies and beg for coverage. So if chiropractors all got together, because what the insurance company is all part of the master plan, right, to make chiropractors conform to like 3 to 5 visits so people can't respond, and then it's like, what's the point? So it's like, it's there's nothing good about it.
Right.
There's just nothing good about it, and so I just wish we'd all get together and go, no, you either cover it properly or we're out.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it takes glow nuts, right?
Yeah. And that's what we're doing this weekend, is raising the certainty so that we can get to that tipping point and go, hey, there's a new way we're going to do these things. But chiropractors have to believe it first.
Yeah, you got to have FU certainty sometimes, as I talk about, right? If you want to have FU success, you got to have FU certainty in any field. Yeah. And so it's like, good for you. That's what I would say to you. It's good for you because you did the right thing.
Awesome.
Cool.
Put your hands together for Lisa. Let's hear it. Yeah. All right, if we have Darby or Ari, if either one of you are near the mic.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, cool. Jump in here, sweetie. So Ariana just graduated school, but she is not from Australia, as you'll hear in just a moment. She's originally from Italy, but she got to hear you because you were doing some Zoom classes and donating your time to a chiropractic school in Europe. And what school would that be?
I'd like to say I was donating, but somewhat donating.
Right
Felt like donating.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was a student in the crowd at BCC.
Yes, I know.
So,
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be really cool.
I didn't swear as much in the classes as I did today, probably.
Yeah, not much, but
So I saw her question. I thought it was great, and then I saw Italy, and I go, "Oh, you gotta come to the mic and do this." So it is all yours.
yeah. Okay. So first of all, thank you both for this seminar. Really, I drove from Brisbane to here because of the cyclone. I had to make it on time. And thank you, James, for the teaching. Really, like, also on a personal level, you gave me the evidence and the strength to have very important personal talks with my family and stuff. So thank you. And so I'm about to start working actually on Monday. So I need to start with the right foot.
So you just went through all your Australian boards and transition and getting registered and that was the last couple of months. So it's an easy process, right?
So easy, just took 6 months. But anyway, so my question for you guys is when you link the organ function to the findings in your touch and tell, which I find amazing, and I want to do it starting on Monday. How would you explain the correlation from a research-based perspective? Because we have those patients that are the believers, so they're like, oh yeah, tell me more, like, and they don't question that much. But I would love to know the research behind it for the most skeptical patients.
I'll let you jump in on the research question.
So here's what I would say. In fact, I had a question from other students at one of the breaks today about this. And so here's the thing about the Merrick system is that I don't think it's the old model where there's a bone out of place putting pressure on a nerve going to the organs. But we also know from some CORE's work and some of this reflex work that areas of the spine definitely correlate to issues in organs where the nerve roots come out of that area. And as I said to these students, look, it's an absurd hypothesis to say that millions of chiropractic patients are lying about the results they get. So this is how I've always said it. There is no doubt that anybody who practices chiropractic where they see somebody more than twice, you know what I mean, has had many, many times in their practice where they've seen something extraordinary happen, which we can't always explain. So what we know is there's always a chance that something related to that Merrick chart is going to happen. There's just no doubt about it. What we can't do is say that we know it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So we know it does happen, but we can't necessarily promise it's going to happen. And so that's how I view the Merrick system, right? I'm more of a way to explain it, which is that those areas of subluxation are going to have effect on probably the autonomic system as a whole more than the nerves, and they're going to affect that area because it's the same topographical organization, right? So the parts of the body, you know, that if the nerve roots for those organs come through that area, you can be sure that those areas are integrated somewhere. And so, you know, I've had patients that, you know, literally couldn't have a bowel movement unless they got their lower T-spine, mid to lower T-spine adjusted. In fact, in my kids, I was telling the story that we called it the poop switch. And so if my kids couldn't go poop, I'd adjust their spine and they'd be literally like heading to the bathroom. And it got to the point where if we were at a restaurant or something and I was rubbing my kids' back, they're like, Dad, I don't want to go poop right now. You know what I mean? And so we call it the poop switch. So, and I know many other chiropractors too had people that deal with people in wheelchairs and they just couldn't have bowel movements unless they got their spines adjusted. And so, and there's just so much of this stuff. So I would say that it's not, you know, your job isn't to make somebody a believer. Your job is to explain what you do and then allow them to accept it or not. But if you get into a position where you're having a convincing conversation, you're not in agreement, you know, right? And remember, if you're having to convince somebody to come under your care, it's already kind of a lost cause in my opinion. And I'll let Brad talk on that now. But it's like, for me, I was like, I don't argue. Like the oncologist doesn't argue with patients about what kind of, how long the cancer is going to treat and what the effects of it going to be. You know, the person prescribing statins doesn't get into it. Like they just don't do it. And it's just like, it's just like, why am I arguing? I'm an expert. I've got someone else to help. So, you know, this is it. Or, you know, if it doesn't suit you, next.
Yeah,
that's how I feel about that.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, all of which I love, and I would just say, based on my experience, and that's a big word, based on my experience, patients who have similar patterns to yours, what we've often seen is this, and then I finish it with, I can't wait to see what happens for you. because everybody's different, right? Patients that have this T4 subluxation, a lot of times that will affect acid reflux. Everybody's different, but I can't wait to see what happens for you, because I've seen this often enough in my experience where if I adjust you right here as I'm doing it, bam, then oftentimes this will change and those complaints go away. But I've seen it hundreds of times in my experience. Can't wait to see what happens for you. So it's an open-ended, let's see where it goes. There's bold predictions, I think, is where chiropractors get in trouble. Right? And I see this a lot. So they go, if I adjust you here, that's going to go away 100%. 95 at the least. Where's your research for 95 or 100? Like we say some stupid shit. If I adjust you right here, it's probably going to be gone by Friday. It's like, oh, fucking, why'd you say that? Now the clock's ticking. Like, we put undue pressure on ourselves, and we also cause undue attention. You don't need to say that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I've seen in my experience this changes dramatically for some people. Let's see what happens for you. But T6 here, L4 there. And you just talk it through, and it's really flexible. But there's no timelines. There's no percentages. There's no by Friday. There's no 90% of my patients get better. Unless you've got major statistics you've been tracking and you can show me, then just don't say it. And so we feel this undue pressure. I think it's some of what we were just talking about in the last hour when you were up on stage. Is a lot of times we play defense and we're defending a position that we don't even feel comfortable. You don't feel obligated to do that. My patients that have had patterns here, oftentimes what they see is this, but hey, everybody's different. In my experience, I see this on a consistent basis. I can't wait to see what happens for you.
Don't promise.
That's it. And it's just unethical. This open thing. But percentages, bad idea. Timelines, bad idea. Picking a date on the calendar, bad idea. And look, I have daughters, and if I'd say, listen, it'll be better by Friday morning, they're up and like tapping their foot like, it's Friday, it didn't happen. It's like, I know how this works, and you set yourself up for disappointment or frustration. And sometimes even chiropractors get themselves in trouble. You don't need to do those things. You don't need to be a bold predictor. Just be honest, leave it open-ended. And a lot of times it becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy where they then go, oh, you're right, it did happen. Or let me share my story. And look, we have a number of people that come in for acid reflux. We have people who come in because they've had dizziness and tinnitus or tinnitus, and they've had, a number of different things, and it's their choice, but they've made that connection. And to me, I just have to create the space, and then however their body goes about it. So I would just say, especially early on, Monday, if you're starting, don't put timelines, don't put percentages, don't put undue pressure on yourself. If anything, buy yourself some time and let the body do the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
So if you wouldn't mind, put your hands together for Ari from Italy. Thank you for being here. And one last thing I'll say about that. I also wanted to just have you guys recognize who she is and what she looks like. So if you do see her around, be a welcoming host and a guest with her. Does that make sense? Or she feels like a guest. She's new here. If you see her at seminars, see her bouncing around. I just always think, like, if you've ever been a new kid in your life, it feels really good when people welcome you. So I would love for the next 24 hours that we're here, you guys do that, and anybody else that's new to this country. If you're willing to do that, will you make some noise for me? Put your hands together.
And I think imagine what an incredible time it is to be starting, like you just finished school and you're starting your practice Monday and you're at this seminar on the weekend before. Like, hands up if you wish you had the seminar before you opened, right? The day before, right? Yeah. So, and made the effort to get down here, so way to go.
Awesome. Let's do this. Darby, if you wouldn't mind coming to the mic, and then if Kim is still in the room, Ravi and Murray, if you could just hold them down, that would be terrific. Let's put your hands together for Darby. Come on.
Does it just go in there?
There we go.
That's a good start.
Atta girl, you're doing great. You're doing great.
I don't know where Sam is, but whoever came up with glow nuts, that's the best thing I've heard.
There was a comment on one of the YouTube videos.
That was my nickname in college.
Actually.
Really?
I have two nicknames. One I can share, one I cannot. Back to you, Darby. What do you have?
My question's rooted actually in a little bit of sadness about the number of people who should be in this room but aren't in this room. And I recognize that we can't go through life getting angry at people's thought patterns or their paradigms, that like I can't personally change everyone. But within chiropractic, it breaks my heart how there's such a divide between paradigms and philosophies and how we help people. So my question is, what advice do you have to help those people who should be in this room to be in this room and to have the right mentors, to have the right coaches, to understand what 160 odd chiropractors also understand.
What would you say? Because you've been on the road a lot longer than I have.
Well, I'd say anger has made me a good living, but anyway. I always feel like if someone's willing to engage in a conversation, it's worth engaging in. Like even now on COVID, right? I don't let shit slide. I'm like, no, it doesn't stop transmission. Now we know that. Masks never work. The Cochrane review is clear. Like, I'm just like, and if like people are offended by it, fair enough. Like you don't have to, chase them around and tell them they're wrong. But I just think, I just think it's worth saying to people, well, how would you know if you didn't go? Because the truth is, most people who don't come, they don't know what's happening here. They're told something like some of the students like, oh, well, apparently you cherry picked the research and all this other bullshit, which is exactly what you say if you don't have data to have a real argument, right? And so it's just like there's all kinds of reasons, but those people, they still deserve they still deserve a handout or a hand up or a reach out, and then if they don't respond to it, that's okay. Now you've upheld your responsibility to be like a kind practitioner and trying to be inclusive. And then if they reject that, that's fine. That's no problem. But if you don't try at all and you're just mad, I think that doesn't help you either. And I think, eventually it's kind of like chiropractic. Like, maybe you'll get 9 no's and a maybe and then a yes. And then that one yes might result in 10 more yeses from the people they talk to that, their friends that wouldn't come, but they did. So I would just say, don't get angry, but, don't let a rejection make you feel rejected. It's just like people can't help themselves sometimes, man. They don't know what they don't know, and they're stuck in something, and their peer group and their acceptance group is so important to them that they find it very hard to sort of like branch out of that. It can be very difficult for people.
I feel like the passion that I have behind like, you need to be here, and I just want to grab you and
I appreciate that.
Cool.
I would just say, over the time that I've been teaching and doing workshops, I see a lot of that too, but there's always light bulbs that go on. And I used to count the people that said no, like in my practice. I would somehow focus on the 7 people that didn't show up for their appointments, even though we had 150 people for the day. And I would look at the 7 no-shows. By show of hands, who's ever been guilty of something like that? You focus on the people that didn't make it, and yet you had 143 people that did make it. So we're kind of funny that way. And a lot of that goes back to loss aversion, and, we count the negatives. And so I kind of know where that comes from. And then step 1 is just kind of reprogramming your own brain to do that. And then kind of what James does, I think really well, is you harness that. And I think that can be a little bit of a superpower, that frustration, if it's harnessed and going, look, I don't want someone to get left out. And so kind of what I did is I go, so if I'm the best communicator and I've done the best job, I can move on and feel guilt-free. Because I used to dwell on it. And whether it was patients in my practice or chiropractors at seminars, it's the same feeling. Like, you need this. I don't need it, but you need to be here, and you're not. And what can I do? And at some point, I think the boundaries word is a really big one, the B word. If I have some boundaries, I'll go and go and go. And then I've just created an end point, because some of that was wasted energy. But also why I love hanging out with the young chiropractors, you included, is that enthusiasm is contagious. And so wanting to continue to help people, I don't feel like I'm fading out. I feel like I'm getting better as I go. And the excitement's picking up because I've seen enough of those miracles. I've seen those turnovers. I mean, there's people in this room, high fives, hugs, and tears, because we've already changed their practice. And so I live for those moments where you have that. And then I just collect the trophies. I want to continue to collect those wins and those big breakthroughs. And that gives you energy to go to the next. So whether you drag somebody in here, look, I've had people pay for my workshops and they've paid for their friend. And then when their friend gets results, they go, you can pay me back later, but I'm so confident I'm going to do this. And every workshop I've done, probably in the last 7 or 8 years, I have at least one person where someone else has purchased the seat. That's total confidence. So to me, consider it. Like, I'll front you the money. I'm not saying you pay for them entirely. I'll pay for it and you'll pay me back. That's how confident I am. And this is something we'll share a little bit tomorrow, but confidence equals competence. And so the more confident I am in my recommendation, that equals competence in the mind of the patient. But it's a similar thing with doctors. I'm so confident this would help you. If we set a date and come back in 2026 and we choose to do this again, then maybe there's people who will spot their friends. I'm so confident you're going to love it. I'll buy the seat. If you're not happy, you don't have to pay me back. But if it helps you and you grow and it's profitable, then just pay me back down the road. And so those kinds of things, to do that, I think that's a total show of confidence, integrity, and it's authenticity. And so I think that over time, you'll kind of find what works for you. I'm not telling you how to do it, but I think that will begin to work too, where you have that confidence with people and then they go, oh, it must be competence that's delivered. And then the rest of it will kind of take care of itself. So keep the fire burning, but don't let it burn you out. Set some boundaries and then take some risk with people and then just count the trophies, because as a young female chiropractor, you're not even 30. You're going to have influence for a lot of decades. So we got to gauge that a little bit and just temper it, but keep that spitfire. We like that.
And the other thing I'll warn you all about, like what I'll say is I'm really happy about how many young chiropractors are in here, right? Because there's real hope for, like, it's so important. But the other thing is that make sure you create a peer group of people who don't need convincing, that support you in what you do. And that's a really important part of it, right? Because I think a lot of times we feel so isolated, we're trying to convince people so that we have people to hang out with and agree with and talk about. So all you young chiropractors in here, support each other and be prepared when you're going to be successful, because you will be. You'll get attacked more by the people who are not successful. And so just be prepared for that. And the best way to do that is to have a peer group of like-minded chiropractors that support each other, whether it's on the phone or Zoom or whatever it is. Stay in contact. And, we can help you do that or whatever. If you're at the center, stay in contact and support each other. It's really key.
I feel like what you're saying is also an extension of leaving the profession better than we found it. And, it's easy to look up to my mentors and my coaches and you guys and, more seasoned chiropractors. And then I think to myself, oh, shit, well, when they're gone, like, who's next? Who's yet to fill that? So I hear what you're saying in terms of how that community.
The best way to predict a future is to create it. So if you wouldn't mind, and you think Darby's got a sense of maybe a possibility of being a future leader, if you would give her some love specifically, because I do think so. Yeah. All right, looking at the clock, we're going to do one more. So Kim, come on up here.
Hey, docs, we always get enthusiasm in how people can learn more. What you're going to hear from next is a doc that's in Sydney, Australia, with a rockin' practice of almost 30 years. What he's going to say is that he came to my practice. What many of you have sent me is that you'd like to shadow me in my practice. Now, you can do it, but we have some rules around it. And I've had to learn the hard way from just having students in my practice observe and not really think much of it. Yet when the veterans come, they see the genius of it. So the way this works, and what you're going to hear about in a moment, is a doc that has come from Australia to my practice, which we do twice a year. The name of the event in my practice is called Fight Club, because the first rule of Fight Club is we don't talk about it. I don't have enough spaces to offer docs. If you want to go and be considered on an application basis, then you have to be in our Level Up Academy. That's our online virtual training that includes our Elements Workshop. If you've done the online coaching through Level Up Academy, then you can have an invite and an application to come to Fight Club to see my office for 4 full days. We'll explain this in just a moment with the doc that's at the mic. However, I have to be upfront and honest in that there are prerequisites. I can't just take strangers into my practice for 4 days. I need to know a little bit about you, your practice style, and your goals. Should you qualify to be one of the 20 doctors that comes twice a year, then you, my friend, will be at Fight Club. What you see and do at Fight Club puts chiropractors on a whole different path, because if you're one of those people that seeing is believing, then you will get to experience this as a 4-day field trip. There are always docs from at least 3 different continents at every Fight Club, meaning every class has docs from Europe, every class has docs from Australia or New Zealand. And then every class also has docs from North America. Every now and then we have docs from a 4th continent, but we can promise you, you'll be one chiropractor in a group of 20 from 3 different continents for an in-office experience that we call Fight Club. Your prerequisite is you have to do the Level Up Academy coaching, which is small group coaching done on a weekly basis. So if you want more information and you're excited to come to the practice, please send us a message so we can get you started with the Level Up Academy, the weekly coaching that I provide that is second to none. And the one metric I want you to focus on with our academy training and coaching is profits. We can let everything else slip away, because what I've learned over the years is the less you're looking at, the more you will see. The less KPIs and metrics you look at, the more you will see profits. If that has appealed to you and you want less stress in your practice after hearing Kim at the microphone, please let me know, and we can get you set up with an application for the Fight Club process. Hey, we're going to finish with a bang. One of my favorite people, Dr. Kim Jung Lee.
You know, so always picks a lot of women, eh? Oh, no, sorry. Dude, sorry. Sorry, Pat, Kim, Pat, you know.
That was G up one of those.
Hey, I don't know. It's 2024, dude. I'm confused.
Okay, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the time. And you guys have done a wonderful job. And I go around the room and I speak to everybody, you know, in between the breaks. And I got to say, everybody's just not only pumped, but also loving everything that you guys are presenting. So thank you. And I appreciate it immensely. I've got more of a practical question, more so regarding the essential nutrients that we need to support our chiropractic care with. I know that you're a big believer of a big advocate for omega oils and vitamin D. Mm-hmm. Now, on a practical basis, do we need to have our practice members tested for their levels before they start taking supplementation or the essential nutrients, or and if so, if they do have to do that, do they actually have to have a certain level of it, and is there a point where they have too much of it?
You want to do that? Or you want me?
No, I'm gonna just add one layer to that too. If you can just really quickly, in like less than a minute, before you answer that question, differentiate supplementation and essentials, and then go ahead and answer that head on.
Yeah, so I mean, there's nutraceutical therapy, which is that you have to have a diagnosis to get it, and you're trying to treat something. It's just allopathy. It's just naturopathy, and it's just allopathy and so that's outside of our paradigm. It doesn't work with what we do. It's not actually addressing a cause. You're not sick because you have a lack of a nutraceutical or a pharmaceutical. Whereas with essential nutrients, if you're deficient in essential nutrients, you are by definition sick, because an essential nutrient is defined in biochemical terms as something that you can't be healthy without and that your body cannot produce. And in terms of your question of can you test it, my view on that is this: how much does a test cost, and how much vitamin D and omega-3 could you buy for the cost of that test? Because here's what I'm going to tell you. What determines what your level is, what your test score is? What determines that? And the answer is your consumption level. Mm-hmm. You can't have a high vitamin D and omega-3 test score without taking enough omega-3 and vitamin D. So the good question isn't what your test score is. The good question is how much are you taking now? And I actually have questionnaires for you to ask them these questions. Mm-hmm. You can just print them out. So it's like, no, I've never done the test. I know some people are like, well, if I show them the test, they're more likely to do it. I'm like, well, you're just not as good as talking about it as me, because I don't need to test it. I'm just saying, like, because once you tell people what an essential nutrient is and you explain to them the importance of it, what the evidence says, they just want to be sufficient in it. And so it doesn't matter. And also a test could change. Like, what if you stop taking it? What would your test score be next week? Mm. Like, a test doesn't tell you anything about what your future is going to be, and it doesn't even tell you about what you were like 2 years ago or 1 year ago. So it's not really, to me, it's the wrong model, because what you really want to do is it's like saying, well, do I need to get my VO2 max measured before I exercise? No. You just should exercise. And so what's my VO2 max? I don't know. You can do a test if you want, but if I were you, I'd just start, doing intervals. Yeah. So, and that's how I feel about the nutrients, which is to say, look, what determines your levels? And by the way, and often blood tests aren't cell membrane tests either. So there's a whole bunch of problems with it. But I would just say what determines your levels are your intake levels. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we make sure you get the right intake levels, and we've got lots of evidence on that of what it should be, and our products match that exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Love it. I would just add something kind of from a philosophical standpoint, and I've heard some old-time chiropractors say this. They say you don't get sick with the flu. You got the flu because you were sick. So to James's point, it's the weakened body. It's the body that doesn't have what it needs, so you're sick. And then whatever comes along, you're more susceptible to get. Does that make sense? So you didn't get sick with the flu, like the germs didn't hit you and then magically do it. It's a variable, it is, right? But the idea is actually you were sick and therefore you were susceptible, and then you got the flu. And I think they did a study, it was at Harvard, where they dropped germs directly into the nose of patients, and it was something like it was influenza, and it was something like 22% of the people actually got the flu and the other 78% didn't. And the variable in between was the immune system. They go, it wasn't an exact 100%. We gave everybody high dose right into their nose. They should have all gotten sick or none gotten sick. Why did some? It's because health is a variable that changes from person to person. your immune system has a big, defense part of this. And so this idea that we're looking for absolutes a lot of time in healthcare, I think it's a misconception that if we do this, you're 100% never going to get that. Or if you don't have this, you'll 100% get sick. Health rarely works in 100%. So it'd be convenient for us. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I always talk about probability versus possibility. Anything's possible. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut. Think about some of your classmates and they're doing well in practice and you go, how the hell are they doing what's a blind squirrel? They're doing well. We're not sure how. But then there's also this ability of what things do you control, and that's probability. And so I know you'll go through this tomorrow, but like how many things are better than the traditional modalities and therapies? How many things a person can do, like exercise and the lineage of things that it's better than, how much better is meditation than taking this pill or drug? And so I think a lot of times we want the absolute for convenience, but it just kind of comes back to the fundamentals of health, which is you got to do your part. And even that doesn't guarantee you're always going to be healthy because there's just multiple parts of it. So keep increasing the possibility or probability because anything's possible. The more variables you plug in that increases the probability, then we eliminate the possibility of devastating things to a smaller number. And I just think continuing to empower people to remind them of their responsibilities, their health, and then just creating healthy habits, I think is huge. And I think we didn't do this on a podcast, but we did it in the pub. Will you just really quickly for like a minute talk about dopamine? Sure. Because I think that ties into Ken's question.
Okay. I want to talk about that study too. I think it was Ader who did it, and it was they also looked at emotional stress levels, and that was the predictor of who got the flu. And then they put people into a cold room, and it didn't have any impact. So it's not temperature, right? It's like it's really so that was a really cool study. Yeah. So what I explain to people is that like humans are dopamine addicts. So the meaning of human life is pleasure, and we are hardwired to require pleasure to enjoy life. And so the meaning of life for us is pleasure. And the story I was talking, I think in the pub, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, was I was doing a radio interview in New York City. And it was early on, this is like early 2000s when I just kind of come out and trademarked the Eat Well, Move Well, Think Well idea. And I was really talking a lot about lifestyle and kind of introduce it into the chiropractic mindset. And this guy said to me, well, like how, if you could just define who's healthy and who's sick, like, how do you differentiate that? Like, what's the main sort of variable that you see? And I say, well, it's how you get your pleasure. And so healthy people get their dopamine and their pleasure from healthy habits. And unhealthy people get their dopamine or their pleasure from unhealthy habits. So you can get a loving relationship, or you can go watch pornography. You can go for a jog, or you can sit and eat potato chips and watch television. You can eat a nutritious meal and feel great, or you can eat candy and garbage, right? And so the truth is that everybody requires dopamine. And this is one of the big mistakes people make, is that they try to take things away from people that are unhealthy. And the rule in all of this is always add positives first, right? Because what positives do, just like I was talking about the neurology earlier, you can't get rid of a bad habit, you have to replace it. So what you want to do is you want to add things that will produce dopamine for people that are healthy first, like go for a walk. When you're on your walk, do some gratitude. Start adding some healthy things to your life. But I really like pizza. Eat your pizza. Don't care. Not taking anything away that provides dopamine for you. You know why? Because then they anchor that to their life being worse. And so people are eating that garbage and they're doing the things that they do, those habits that are really unhealthy, but that might be their only source of pleasure. Mm-hmm. And if you take that away, their life is worse. Mm. They might not be less healthy, but their life is worse. Mm. And most people will choose pleasure over health, which is why they're making these decisions. So what you have to do is replace the unhealthy sources of dopamine and pleasure with healthy ones. Is that
perfect? No, that's exactly what I was referring to. I just got a little nervous when you started answering that because you said, we talked about in the pub. You correct me if I'm wrong. We were in a pub, bro. I don't remember everything we talked about. Dude, but that was it.
That wasn't that bad, that pub. The pub in Edinburgh was bad.
So I have to share. We have a video from a pub in Edinburgh, and they did last call. And who's ever been in a pub and panicked when they ring the last call bell? Is that just me? Raise your hand if you've ever been in a pub. Yeah. So they're like, last call. I'm like, get 18. And I'm notorious for just in case pints. So I did. I ordered 18 pints. And so we have a table full of pints. We hadn't crushed them yet, but they were like, you guys have 12 minutes. We're like, we can do it, And so we're sitting around a table with some really good chiropractors, like some of my favorite people. And I pulled up my phone and I'm like, James, talk me through this again. It's eat well, think well. What's the rest of it? And he goes, drink well. It was like all these vibes. So I want to get your blessing before I share that video because it's freaking hilarious. I'm like, this is awesome.
It only got worse.
That's right. But what you're talking about, I think, is add the positive first. Like that makes so much sense. And so for the people here listening, this might not be something that resonates with you. And you go, I think I got my stuff in check. But think about patient education. Think about how you transfer someone's life into a higher level or transition into healthy living. That's it. It's not pulling out the negative. It sucks and I'm going to go back. I heard you say, keep eating pizza. All right, cool. You got me. But we're going to do this also. And it's like, all right, I'll do that. But I don't have to give it my, my comfort level.
I always want their non-negotiable, man.
That's it. And it's like, I got my pizza and I'm going to hold my crust and, I love pizza. And it's like, keep it. Right. And then, but we're going to add this healthy thing. They go, okay. So then there's a little bit of that, that compromise that goes on there.
As their dopamine levels go up, that pizza becomes less important, right?
Yeah.
And that's that repetition you were saying earlier.
100%.
The regularity, the continual repetition of that.
And when you get lifestyle right, which we'll teach more lifestyle as we go on the podcast and everything else, right? But when you get it right, what you realize is it's totally congruent with chiropractic. It's about addressing the cause. It's about giving the intelligence of the body the resources it needs, because it does need resources, right? Yeah. If you don't breathe, you die. I don't care how good how much you get adjusted. Like your innate needs resources to produce healthy structure and function. But when you get it right, what most people do wrong is they do too much to start, and they're in a hurry, right? And they also start telling people to take away stuff, and then people don't want to come back because they don't want to report to you that they haven't stopped something. Yeah. And so the idea is, if you give them something super easy to achieve, right? Like kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? Is that it's like, hey man, can you just even if you don't feel like walk, could you walk to the end of your sidewalk and back, or out to, you know what I mean? And say something, that one thing that you're grateful for. Could you do that? And it's just so easily accomplished, right? That they end up getting dopamine from the accomplishment. And there's, you just always make sure that it's something that's easy for them. And then that builds dopamine. Yeah. Right.
I love it. I think it's huge. And look, changing people's behavior outside the practice, it takes strategies like that. It takes higher level questions. It takes tactics that work. And then once it's proven and shared, then everybody in this room and listening can do this, right? Like, hey, this is an easy thing, but that little, don't take away, something that they really love. Let them have it. All right, cool. Now they're engaged in the process. And look, we've done stuff. I don't do a lot with, telling people what to eat and what not to eat, but I know psychology, and I just go, take a picture of your plate. Don't write it down. Don't tell me the portion sizes. Just take a photo. And just that activity alone, that they're going to show me what they've eaten. A lot of people are like, I was going to put a second helping of potatoes on, but then I remembered I had to show you the photo. And I go, oh, so a little bit of accountability. And I don't judge it. I just go, just show me. Show me your portion sizes. Show me a picture of what you ate. They said, I actually almost put the second scoop on and then I didn't. So even stuff like that, like photos of it, instead of giving me a nutritional journal in my practice, that's been huge. No extra work for me. But it's a higher level question in my practice. And then I don't have to sit there and do nutritional counseling or pretend I'm something I'm not. But the accountability and them being called to task, I think, is really big. Yeah, hey, absolutely. Real quick question for you, though. You've been to my practice.
Absolutely.
I love the authenticity. Can we finish this session with a little, what's your share? Anything goes. What did you learn? If you were the teacher after coming to my practice, and the first rule of Fight Club is what?
We don't talk about Fight Club.
We don't, so we call it Fight Club. So you've been there. We're going to break the first rule. Anything that would help the people listening. There's no rules. We just broke that one. What would be a benefit to anybody practically as we kind of wrap up the session?
I think that I went in there with a very open mind. I've obviously been in practice for coming up 25, 26 years now, and there's probably not too many things I haven't seen. And so it was actually, I went in there with an open mind, but what really surprised me was the efficiency and how you moved around the adjusting room, and also the systems in place with your CA. I love the hand signals. I love how you guys spoke without speaking, and all the practice members just came in and knew exactly what was happening, and they weren't in any way flustered. I loved how they knew it was their turn to get adjusted. They just turned up, sat down, got up, laid down, and you just made for me reinforced for me how easy practice could be and how enjoyable it was. The energy in the room was great. You probably won't, I don't know, many people probably know this, but unless you see Brad in the practice, he's actually very quiet. He's so loud on the stage, but you know,
all right, easy.
You know,
I thought the same thing. He's been up knock.
well, that was a live podcast, but not say too much.
Yeah.
But no, it was fantastic, and I love the fact that you don't have to say too much to be able to be fully engaged with the practice members, and that's what I took a lot out of. I literally went back, the following week, horribly hungover, but got in practice and was like literally didn't say too much at all, and just got on with the adjustment, touch and tell, and that was it. And I think for me, if you get an opportunity, and I don't know how many people get the opportunity to go to the fight club, but if you do, you probably won't ever regret ever going. And it's the biggest investment I've made, and it's the most. When I say biggest, I don't mean in a financial way, but I mean in completely as a chiropractor and as a person. So I can't thank you enough for that.
I love it. Yeah, and you would agree everything we taught today is consistent, congruent.
Absolutely.
Right?
The authenticity that you put forward in the seminars is exactly what you do in the practice. And I love the fact that you're still in practice.
Me too. That's one of the best things.
Yeah, and I think for so many years, and I've seen so many people, and they spoke, but they just don't walk the talk. And I think that was the thing that blew me away. I thought, look, this guy was seeing so many people in the space of an hour. I was blown away, and I said, this is what I want to be doing.
I appreciate it.
So Can I tell a story about the pub?
Yeah.
So we're at the pub, not the total shit-faced night.
Oh, good.
But the
I know
half
that one.
shit-faced night. And we're sitting around, and a guy who's done my stuff for a long time, Irish guy, practicing in UK, and I was kind of listening to it. I was a bit quiet because I was hurting.
I have that effect on people.
Yeah. And so, but it was really cool because this guy was saying to Brad, well, a lot of people come to me if they've done my stuff, and they're they're usually pretty keen to, and then they hear Brad and they hear the stuff we're doing together, just like you, and the authenticity is there, which is what I really like about Brad. He doesn't exaggerate either. You go see his practice, he's not exaggerating, right? And so, but it was this guy's I've had this $500,000 practice, and when I got this practice, I was I always wanted to have $1 million practice. And the guy who I bought it from said, "Oh, you're not going to make $1 million from chiropractic, but you'll do well and be comfortable." And he's like, I'd really like to have $1 million practice. So Brad, I'm looking forward to this. I signed up for your coaching. And he goes, "I'm looking forward to that." And Brad's just "Yeah, dude, that's easy. We'll kind of get that." It was just such a cool thing. And there was no sleaze, right? It was not here's what you're going to have to do to do that. This is what you're going to have to coerce people to do. Here's, it was just all about, I could just show you the procedures where you actually are doing exactly what you're doing now, but it's just going to be more efficient, and you're going to be able to serve more people quicker. But they're going to get the same kind of quality of care and everything else. And it was really cool. And then Brad, I said that story to Brad. I said, "Dude, that was a really cool moment of eavesdropping for me." And because I was, and then Brad's like, "Yeah, but did you hear what the other guy said?" Right? Well, tell the story. It's fun.
So then the other chiropractor sitting next to him, and culturally, kind of like Australia, but in Europe, they don't talk about the numbers and the money. In the U.S., they're like, "There's a camera. I made $1 million last year," and you can too. I'm like, just tone it down a little bit. That's but the chiropractor sitting next to him, and they were good friends. He goes, "I'm really glad you brought this up." James is on one side and he's on the other. He's like, "I already have $1 million practice. I want to go to 2 million. And his best friend, he goes, "You do?" He goes, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They're best friends. They spend tons of time together.
Yeah, they were just back in the Swiss Alps skiing. What a lifestyle these guys are living, right? I'm
he goes, "You do?"
Wouldn't mention
you never told me. They would never mention it. Best
Yeah.
friends, because that's just
what
out of
I
bounds.
like.
And so for me, then what I liked is then those conversations open up. And I want to go back to something real quick about being loud on the stage. For me, that's a pattern interrupt. And then we come in with the better way to do it. It's a pattern interrupt. When I jump around, I'll drop F-bombs on purpose because then we're about to go into a role play. So it's a little bit of, do I have your attention? Now do it. But I've said this for years. After 2 days of teaching, I'm wiped out. You know what I mean? I'm an introvert. And so for me to do that, it's for the audience's benefit. I am fired up. I'm a lacrosse coach. I'm a Division I athlete. So to me, I'm like, yeah. But in my practice, I whisper. right? The lights are low.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like I move slower when we get busier, and people go, why do you do that? I go, because now I'm intentional, and they don't feel rushed, but they feel the ease, because I can't adjust into stress. I've got to adjust into ease. And then when James and I started talking about, hey, how do we make certain procedures better? And we have conversations, and I go, I'm always willing to change my practice, which keeps it fun for me. So my basic touch and tell has now morphed into something where we're using the Shea Health Assessment. I go, give me a couple weeks. Let me play with it. Let me report back. Let me give you what we said. I didn't like how this, give me a couple more weeks. I'm going to say it this way. Now it's better, and so for me, it's fun to just continually plug things in, and then instantly it's new content for the audience, but it's been tested in the lab. And then I always say, proven in the wild, right? I'll test it first, and then other chiropractors can go and do it. But you don't have to have that personality where I'm on stage and I'm keeping you guys fired up. It's a low-key, mellow table talk. It's a real easy process. And so I'm really quick to point that out too. Like, the way that I run my practice, you can do it too. Right? You don't need a monster personality. That's not what I bring to the office. It's this ease, and I want more people doing that. And then also the flexibility to improve your practice, because I think the real game is the game within the game, which is, can you be better than you used to be?
Yeah.
Can you be better than yourself? Because I'm going to try and be better than myself. And those two chiropractors in Europe, the fact that we're talking about $1 million and a $2 million practice, because the other guy goes, I have $1 million, I'd like to do $2 million. I said, I do that routinely with chiropractors who don't want to talk about it, but confidently I can say, yeah, we can do that. And then my first question is always, what good are you going to do with it? And one of the answers was, well, I want to donate to the Scotland College of Chiropractic. I go, great. If my secret sauce is, if you already have a predetermined place where you're going to tithe or give, and you're calling on the universe to give you more resources to help you, if you've already predetermined where I'm going to gift when I get it, where I'm going to put this toward as a give, then the universe will conspire to work for you.
100%.
But if it's you just getting more to have more to do more material shit, I think that shuts the universe out. But if I do contracts, I go, listen, I'm going to give to this thing, so when I do this, I'm going to do this as a give. My income is going to equal outcome. I believe that's a superpower. Maybe that's crazy, but I just feel like that's part of manifesting as well, is tapping into that vibrational frequency and going, I'm going to give to the Scotland College. And so those two guys, we were having pints and just sitting there, and it was a deep and meaningful conversation.
The coolest caveat for me, and the one that's necessary for me to go the extra mile, is help people, which I do a lot. Those of you know, you've probably emailed me if you've had issues, and I just do it, right?
Well, that's where the white paper came from, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing for me is, the caveat always has to be, as long as I don't have to compromise my integrity or my ethics, I want to make $10 million a year.
Right.
That's fine. What you want to earn it's okay. It doesn't make you better than the guy earning less or the gal earning less. It might be a goal for you. That's fine. You might have great thing, but as long as you're saying to yourself, as long as I don't have to compromise my ethics or integrity, this is what I want to learn to do. And that's the key for me. Yeah. Otherwise it wouldn't work with Brad. That was a big part of our conversation. It's like, listen, man, as long as it's not sleazy. And then when you got to see him, and I've had the experience of seeing somebody else very similar, and it'll blow your mind, everybody. It'll blow your mind to see how slow. If you saw me in practice, I'm quiet. Believe it or not. Like, I get on stage and I'm on. Honestly, it's a performance to make you feel good that someone like me could be so cocky, right? But I'm not that way. Like, that's not my home life. You know what I mean? It's just like, if someone pisses me off, I'm in. I can rev up fast, but that's not how I practiced. But you need to see somebody who does what you do with my high level of frickin', balls in the wheelbarrow or whatever, right? Yeah. But listen. When you and if you can, Brad has room. I don't know how, but if you can go watch somebody practice like this and see how slow they move, how happy their patients are, the value that they're getting, and you'll go, oh man, that was wow. Did you see 30 in the afternoon, right? Exactly. And they're like, no, I saw 150. Yeah. And you're like, bullshit. Show me the books. And then you look at it and you go, I don't find that, I never would have thought it, because it's not rushed. It's not a compromise of value. None of it. It's like high quality first, and then you got the systems in place to make that high volume. But the quality must be first.
100%.
That's it.
That's exactly what I saw.
Yeah, and we have like a one-way mirror, docs, and they count. They count. I don't even count. I go, I'm not even going to show you those. You keep tracking. You count, because that authenticity is lacking. But I want that to bring up the certainty too. And I think this is where the yin and the yang works, right? Like the science and the procedures, the research and the application, the validation and the how-to and the practice. I think that's where this is going. And honestly, as good as today has been, and it's been great, right? The best practice is seminar, and day 2 is even better than day 1, because we've laid a ton of foundation today, and it's not that it's boring at all, but friggin' tomorrow is probably 3 times better, right? Like the information tomorrow on top of what we did today, it's like 3 or 4 times better, because it just accelerates practices for you guys on Monday. And so,
I sure hope this is going to continue, guys.
Well, that's what my part of this, and you know, it wasn't an easy convince. But
it has been a long time since we've seen you there.
Yeah,
you did mention the wheelbarrow.
Yeah, that's but for me, it's like if we can get this to, you know, I'd love to do one in Hawaii where we get all the people from the southern hemisphere, all the people from the northern hemisphere, we get together.
If you're willing to go to Hawaii, let's hear it. If you go to Hawaii.
But I'd love to see 1,000 people in the room, because what I believe is, if there's going to be a legacy left, then what it has to be is people who have the level of certainty that you're going to get from this, and coaching with Brad and listening to these podcasts and doing all that stuff. But if we can leave 1,000 chiropractors like that, I think it's going to make a difference going forward. And if we can't, I worry. That's the honest truth. I worry. I think my honest thing is, I'm not sure chiropractic is going to be around in Canada in 20 years.
Wow.
Because if you look at what's happening, it's morphing into something that's not about the adjustment, right? And so, you know, it does worry me. And so my thing is, Brad's like, well, you know, we got to get out there, man. And I'm like,
we talked about doing a best practices in Canada, and I said it may not be the biggest draw, but it would be the right thing to do. Through COVID, we did seminars in cities that were being bombed and burned out. And I just said, it's the right thing to do. It's not a good financial model, but I just feel like the chiropractors there need a boost. So let's go where it's hurting. So that may be a possibility, you know, do something like that. But I agree with you. I think there are certain places in 20 years, I really wonder if it's going to be around, or if it's just going to be a subset of, not even medicine, a subset of physiotherapy.
Well, and the thing is like well, but anyway, I know this person, and they were asking me about, like, their kind of question about chiropractic college or physical therapy, and they were really into sports stuff, and they really wanted this stuff. I said, listen, like, if you want to do that, you need to go to physical therapy school, because it's half the money. Sorry, 1/4 the money.
Jeez.
And half the time, and you graduate with a master's degree from the Faculty of Medicine. If you go to chiropractic school, it's double the time. It's 4 years instead of 2. Shouldn't be, by the way. It shouldn't be. And you're going to pay 4 times the amount of money. And when you get out, you're going to get no referrals. And it sounds to me like you want to practice physical therapy anyway. And so, but what's interesting is they've had this awakening, right? Where they're now doing physical therapy, but they're super interested now in actually getting people healthy instead of therapy. And they're like, there's no venue for me. I said, if you had said that to me before, I would have said, you know, go through it.
Right.
It's worth it, right? But you know, it's just. I thought Australia was the same as Canada. I just can't tell you how happy I am to see all these young people here.
It's so cool, right? It's awesome.
Like I just. Yeah, that's a positive for me, man. Like that's like a big one. So
yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of cut it for today. It's just full heart, right? I mean, coming to Australia, I know it's a long trip, and we can talk about all the barriers that we've overcome and what you've done to choose to be here. But the truth is, after day 1, and I told you, like, I've been coming here like every 90 days. I'm like, I got to get you there. You'd be so good for them. And just so you guys know, that was always the conversation. It wasn't that it was good for us. I'm like, it'd be so good for you. Does that make sense? And so now that you're here, you would agree, like, these faces in this room and today, the energy and the vibe, it is a really big potential, but potential is an empty word. Yeah. If we can keep filling it with Australian chiropractors and move them up the scale, Australia could be leading the world in chiropractic. And I don't say that lightly. All the raw materials are here. Very little resistance, really, compared to other places. This could be the leader in chiropractic in the world.
The funny thing is, like 90% of the people here have never been to any of my surgeries. Like Keith and I used to do, we get Brad out of a room, we have 200 people at Bondi, right, at the Grand, whatever, Swiss Grand or whatever. It was incredible, and none of those people are here, right? So I'm gonna get on those people because they need you. Well, I mean, Andrew, Andrew's like, how many times have you done the certification?
Oh, the certificate, full one, once.
Okay, because Andrew also brought his family over for one of my wellness camps, implementation camps. So funny story. His kids were there, right? And then they're worried about bears. And I'm like you got sharks and alligator crocodiles, right? And I'm like snakes and shit. I'm like, you're worried about bears, and so I brought them all and I said, listen, I want to go over some safety stuff for the bears. Ready? How old were your kids? 8?
6 and 4.
6 and 4. I said, okay, so gather around. This really important. Kids come around, and we've got to really be careful. And they had this big bear out front, right? It was like I don't know what it was, like a statue of a bear, right? I said, so I'm going to show you what happens if you run into a bear in the forest this way. And I went over and I hoofed it right in the nuts. His kids were just killing themselves laughing. It was so funny. Man. Oh, that was fun. Yeah.
Is that when it became an indoor camp?
Yeah. But the truth is, and Keith, right? Like, you guys were really involved in these, and it's just like, so my thing is, like, these people need to come out. If you're listening to this, you need to come out and then experience me and Brad, because it's different either one of us apart, right? Yeah. And it's just like, but those people, they can't all be retired. They're not all as old as you, right? Or are they? I mean, there was some semi-younger people there.
He's pretty fucking old.
Oh, dude, he's like, he's got about, maybe a week, 2 weeks of practice left in his life.
But it is a great culture in Australia. And honestly, it could be world leaders. I would say if there are any Canadians listening, you go, well, where do we send our kids? There's only CMCC. I'm going to say New Zealand. Send them to New Zealand College of Chiropractic. Send them there, and that's one of the biggest draws of that school is Canadians who come down, because otherwise it's a monopoly. And look, there's a lot of work to be done in every country, but just today in day one, I feel really good hearing that, because I go, if we go down there and it's not a good turnout, or people show up and they're hyper skeptical, I go, it's a little bit on me if you don't have a good experience. But all through today, it was just really encouraging. So number one, he's got a full heart, and number two, that's because of you guys. So if we could just kind of wrap this thing up with a big round of applause. Thank you guys for doing this. And thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim, for being here. But again, most importantly, it was a big effort to get down here, and if nothing else, this is a give back to the profession. And I keep talking about you like a global treasure, and I don't think I'm overselling it just because of what you delivered today, what you consistently do, and it's just one of those things. For decades, you've been this consummate force, and now you're infecting other chiropractors to think the same way and have this edge and that that chutzpah, that swagger, that bravado, whatever you want to call it. It's like it's back, and you have a contagious impact on people. So again, I know we're friends and we get to do things on a consistent basis, and we're partners on a lot of really cool projects. I just never gets lost on me how big your heart is. It's the only thing that's bigger than your brain. And to keep this PG, we're going to cut it right there. Okay. Hey everybody, this was the episode of the Chiro-Factor. We may have some time to take questions tomorrow. I got a stack of them. We're not going to get through all of them, so my apologies if your question didn't get asked. But this rift and the live interaction is what makes this like the cherry on top for us. So from Sydney, Australia, if you are an Aussie, let me hear you. And I'm going to relive my childhood dream twice. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Oi, oi, oi! Cheers from Sydney.
So you could see we have some fun with the audience, and they have fun with us. And we welcome that to the mic. This doesn't need to be scripted. We are ingratiated in chiropractic night and day, and I've done so for 27 years, probably even longer than that, because my first philosophy event was 30 years ago. James Chestnut, even longer than that. That's me being polite as the younger doctor in the combination, but you can see it oozes out of our pores. It's infectious to the people around us. And if this has helped you, I would just ask you, leave us some positive comments on YouTube, drop some positive comments on Spotify, likes, thumbs up, maybe even share it on social media. But please commit to doing one of those things so we can spread this thing called chiropractic. We are bringing evidence-based chiropractic around the globe, and our pilot tour to the UK, to Australia, and in the US is done. We will be announcing other dates for the Best Practices Seminar. To stay connected, keep listening to the Chiro-Factor podcast. And again, if you can click the notifications button and subscribe on YouTube, then you won't miss an episode when they drop. If you can leave us a comment, we would greatly appreciate it, because the more positive comments, thumbs ups, and likes we get, the more likely people are to find us organically. And by now, we are more than 10 episodes deep. You know we are doing this for the right reasons. You know we're doing this to help chiropractors become chiropractic-centric again. We could use your help. Any referrals, any shares are welcome. The comments down below is exactly what we're looking for. And if I can help you in the coaching realm, Level Up Mentoring.rocks is where you can find all my dates and products and services. It is not a .com because it rocks. Level Up Mentoring.rocks. I'm not a coach. I'm in the trench. I still see patients. We work at a high level, and I want you working at a high level. I'm of the opinion there's plenty of room at the top. So come join us for any one of the workshops, any one of the online programs. We tend to over-deliver and blow some friggin' minds. And as you saw with the audience today, it can be done in a playful manner. Nobody says learning has to be boring. It can be fun and edutaining. Join us at levelupmentoring.rocks. And we did do a second group for the Australian podcast. So look for the next episode, either in front of the Sydney Opera House or with a second set of Aussie docs. And the second set, they were tuned up and warmed up, ready to go. It takes on a pretty humorous start, but you'll have to wait to see what that one is. Click the notification button and you won't miss it. Cheers, everyone. Until next time, there's many factors in health, but we know the X factor is oftentimes the Chiro-Factor. Dr. Brad Glowaki for Dr. James Chestnut. We say thank you for all the love and support down under. What an amazing group. Cheers, everyone.